On this video, what Scott's going to do for us, we're going to show you how to correctly remove and replace a mid XRX carburetor, and how to readjust it once you put it on, how to tighten your bolts properly back. And what we're doing first is removing the air filter assembly. Now we have 3 bolts that we need to remove. We got 2 nuts here and our top bolt over here that holds our assembly down on top. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to shut our fuel valve off so that we can slide this off of the unit. This one. Fuel valve goes this way. We're going to show inspecting it. We're going to inspect our insulator gasket, make sure our rubber's not torn and it's good condition. Always inspect your parts when you're disassembling so you know what your problem was when you're taking it apart, not just putting something on new. Go ahead, Scott. What Scott's doing here, on this particular car, we've got to remove this one stud to pull the carburetor off. So he's going to use his 2 nuts and jam lock them together. And then he can use his backup nut to unscrew that stud that's holding the carburetor on. Okay, once he's removed the stud, he's going to slide this carburetor forward a little bit so he can get to the items, and we're going to show you before removing them what we're doing. He's got to remove your throttle cable, which slides through the top, and the little pin that goes back out the opposite side. Just like that. He can come forward a little bit more. What are you?
Well, I need to do it.
Okay.
What do you want to do?
We're going to remove the spring and the rod to the throttle assembly. Lightly bend on your pliers when you remove the spring and the rod so you don't bend them out of position. Now we're going to remove the fuel line. This particular car does not have a fuel shutoff for your fuel line coming from your tank, so we're using a pair of crimp pliers to shut that fuel off. And Scott's going to show you how to slide this on off. There you go. Now what we're going to do, we're going to remove our gaskets and our plate to make sure that the insulator block is not cracked or broke and our gaskets are not torn. Your coil wire hooks into your insulator block, and that's what Scott's removing now. So what he's inspecting is to make sure that the gasket is not tore or this block is not cracked. We'll look at this top edge and the bottom edges to be sure there's no cracks in our gaskets and our insulator block. We can reinstall this now that we know it's good. This was a good card. It did not have an issue. So we're going to reinstall it. He's putting his coil wire back in. That's going to hold it up half in position for him. We're sliding our carburetor back in position. And the first thing Scott's going to do is slide his fuel line back onto the carburetor. And he can get his pinch pliers out of the way. He's going to reinstall the throttle rod and throttle return spring. He's tugging on the spring to make sure his hoops are good. Now he's going to put your stud back in and realign. Make sure that you get your gasket and your phenolic block back up in position when you're putting your stud back in. He'll tighten the stud up good. And then remove his jam nuts. We're going to reinstall our rubber seal between the carburetor and the air filter. He's already inspected it, so he knows it's good. He's showing you now where the up position would be on this particular carburetor, making sure your vent tube is open. Reinstalling the throttle cable. He's going to slide it through the top slot and then pull your pin back into position. And this right here is going to bolt underneath, right here, just like you're seeing it, flat to flat. And that air filter assembly will be on top of that. So make sure you, when you line it back up with your bolt, you get it in position there. Sliding the cover on now, and you can't see it from the angle we're at, but we're putting our vent tube to the breather box back on now, while it's easy to do. We're going to start our two nuts in position, and then Scott's going to start the top bolt. We're going to make sure this bolt is started good, but we're not going to tighten this bolt first. We come back over here and slowly pull your two bolts down, nuts down evenly. Because the reason you do that is so that the carburetor seals against your head and your gasket, and you're not out of position by tightening this one first, leaving an air gap in here. So you snug up your two front nuts, good and snug there. And now we're going to tighten the top one in position. We're going to make sure our choke bracket is at a good angle to where it's pulling as straight as it can. Sorry, that's it. Yeah. Scott's turned the fuel back on. And now we're just simply going to check our air filter. which this is new, it is clean, but we'll want to clean this foam if it needs clean. You can do that in hot soapy water. If your element underneath is dirty, of course, we'll need to replace it. And that's how we put the carburetor back on a mid XRX.